Hello there and welcome back once again to another edition of Silly Car Showdown. Today we are taking a look at the Lamborghini Urus, more specifically the production version of the Urus, the 2019 model. This car was requested by 04567 and the Urus is kind of a strange one for me. I like parts of it, I dislike some other bits. Styling wise, I think it looks great, I really like the styling. I'm not massively against a Lamborghini SUV existing. The problem I have with the Urus is it doesn't really feel special enough to me. You know, it sort of has that 4-litre twin-turbo V8, which is an Audi engine. It's based on an Audi platform. You know, Porsche having an SUV is one thing, but I think Lamborghini having a sort of Volkswagen Group generic-y SUV, granted, you know, it does make more power than all the rest of them, and it's supposed to have different changes and all sorts. But for me, compared to something like, say, the LM002, it's just not quite crazy enough to be a Lamborghini, if you ask me. Anyways, we are aiming to make it crazy today. We'll start off by looking at the engine swap. So as I mentioned, standard engine is a 641 horsepower 4-litre twin-turbo V8. Not a bad engine, but it's not quite the engine this car deserves. We also have the option of a Lamborghini Huracan V10, which is actually significantly lighter, or the Aventador V12. I'm thinking we're going to go for that Aventador V12, because this car is going to be the Aventurus. That is the plan. Of course, we do want the twin turbos. As usual in this series, no driveline swaps are allowed, and also the car is not allowed any Forza Aero, which is pretty much what comprises all this car, apart from the light bar, but the light bar adds a fair bit of weight, so I won't put that on. Also, it doesn't look quite as cool on the Urus. We are, of course, going to want the race tyres. 295s on front, not quite as big as the X5's tyres, but 335 on the back. I think that's about what the X5 was running. Not too sure. That really is the biggest competitor to this car, of course. The X5 was ran with a V12 engine that was also an SUV. In theory, this should be quicker. It should be lighter, it's a more modern chassis. It should be able to put up with a bit more, but we will have to wait and see. Apparently brakes are already fully upgraded. We will go for the race suspension, which doesn't make this car look quite as weird as something like the Alfa Romeo Stelvio. I still think that's probably the car which has sort of changed the most when you put it on race suspension, although I'm sure there's some stuff coming up later on that will also do similar sort of things. £1,059 dropped with the weight reduction, and now we're just got to build up that V12 engine. Can't quite remember the BMW's PI, I think it was like an S2 930-ish, somewhere around there. This car is going to be okay. S2 950 and S2 953 with the intercooler, a total of 1,515 horsepower, 1,101 foot-pound torque, 3,792 pounds of weight, 2.2 seconds to 60 at top speed of 265 miles per hour. Yeah, statistically that is pretty darn excellent. I think that's like one of the quickest 0 to 60s we've ever had in top speed. You know, you really can't do much past 270 in this game, so that is pretty ridiculous. Yeah, I'm expecting good things out the Urus. I'm not quite sure what it's going to do. I don't know if it's going to be quite as good as the X5, but I can't wait to see how the Lamborghini Urus performs. Of course, to find out how it performs, there's only one way to do so, and that's by taking it to our track. Well, here we are at our Edinburgh course, ready to lay down 5 laps with the Lamborghini Urus to see how well it gets on. Our current leader is the Ferrari FXXK, which had a time of a 134.196. The Lamborghini probably not going to beat that. This car's main rival for today is probably going to be the bloody brilliant BMW X5 V12, which set the time of a 139.964. If I was to give you a guesstimate right now, I'd probably say best case scenario for this car is like 138 if it handles just as well as that BMW did, because that BMW was a very exquisite car to drive. But you don't know. I've of course been surprised by many cars before, many times before, so who knows, maybe the Urus will be another one of those. In terms of its handling capabilities, feels pretty good, definitely feels like there's some weight behind it, but that's because there kind of is a fair bit of weight behind this car. It's not a, you know, 3,794 pounds. It's lighter than stock, but it still isn't a particularly light car. If you wanted this car to be lighter, you'd go for the V10, which is a lighter engine. However, the V10 doesn't quite get the same amount of power. And sometimes with a car like this, oh god, that really is not helping. Need to be careful down there. With a car like this, there's only so much that you can do weight-wise. I mean, at the end of the day, it's still going to be a heavy car either way. So sometimes when you have a heavy car, the best thing to do is really to just lob more power at it, and that will make it quicker overall. So that's what we've decided to do in the case of this. That first opening lap, there was some mistakes, and that's still a pretty darn quick time by the looks of it. A 1:43.977 starts us off. So far so good for the Lamborghini Urus, or the Aventus. I'm going to go with Aventus. I quite like the sound of that. Sounds a bit like Toyota Avensis, but you know, Avensis. That's going to be really hard to remember saying that, because I always want to put a D in Aventador for some reason, even though I know it's Aventador. So yeah, that might get slightly irritating depending. Because it won't have quite the stupid name the last one had. The Ferrari was, I do have to say, saying that so many times, eventually you do go slightly insane with saying the Ferrari. But there you go. There's a long name. I think that's why I went for the Ferrari FXXK out of everything on that list that could beat that car. Mainly because it had been sat on the list for a while, and also because that's a lot less of a name to say. I mean, pretty much every champion we've had around here has had a ridiculously long name, so here's what it is. Ooh. Gotta try and be a little... Really does not like that downhill section. That's sort of where some of the heavier cars really start struggling, and this one, yeah, it starts wiggling quite badly through there. You can feel the fact the front end is the weightiest part of the vehicle. The front end sort of just acting as an anchor and throwing the rear end of the car around. It's a very peculiar feeling, let's put it that way. I don't think it's quite as nice a handling as the X5 was, or 1:44.64. Certainly not bad though. Not bad in the slightest. Of course, my driving has not been quite the best. That should improve over the next few laps though. Still got a fair ways to go in this car. I'm only halfway done here, so plenty of time to improve upon itself. But yeah, you can definitely feel the front end has more weight behind it. The car almost has a slight feeling of a deadness in it. It's not the most responsive thing in the world, which sure, it's an SUV, but yeah, it does feel a little bit sort of dead when you're sort of throwing it around. It's not quite as lively as the X5. The X5 was sort of... It was kind of like a bigger Impreza, really. This is not that. You know, this definitely feels like a heavier car. It definitely feels, well, more like the Audi platform cars it shares with. You know, stuff like the Q7 and the Touareg and the Cayenne. Actually, the Cayenne's quite a hefty thing as well. I was driving the Cayenne earlier today, actually, or the Cayenne. I don't know, however you want to go about that for one of the seasonal championships. I say one of the seasonal championships. By the time that this video goes out, it almost certainly will not be a seasonal championship anymore. These are recorded fairly well in advance at this point, so maybe I have to start getting them out a bit quicker. Who knows? I don't really want to kill Azza though, so we'll see. Shouldn't really be discussing that stuff with you lot at the moment anyways, but straight line speed's pretty good. Not quite on the level of some of the supercars and stuff like that. We've had that lap was slightly quicker. Yeah, not quite, you know, supercar levels of straight line speed, but not bad at all. Acceleration is excellent, as you'd probably predict. Sort of the one weird thing with this car is getting used to the size of it, because it is big. You know, there's no getting around the fact the Urus is big. The Urus might be the biggest SUV we've had, maybe. The X5 was quite big, but I think this might actually be wider than that. And that's sort of posing its own issues as well. You know, I'm not used to driving such a wide car around here. So, you know, having a wide car, and especially having a wide car that doesn't change directions quite as quickly as maybe you'd hope, it doesn't really mesh together. It sort of becomes this issue. Sorry, my voice is going apparently. I hope not, because this is the first one I'm recording today. Better not go halfway through this. Yeah, it's a little bit disappointing, to be honest with you. I was kind of expecting the Aventus to be a little bit more controllable. I mean, that downhill section was better that time around, but it doesn't really matter because his lap's already been thrown away. Yeah, it's not quite as good. Maybe on the final lap I can really pull out the bag, but it's just not quite as good as the X5, in terms of the handling anyway. Straight line speed, it may be slightly quicker than the X5, I'm not too sure. I'd have to re-watch the footage and drive the car again. But yeah, just as an overall review, I just don't think it's quite as good as the X5 was, which is a shame because I had high hopes for the Urus. Of course, there is another version of this car in the game, the concept car, that actually has wide body fenders for it. So I don't know if maybe that might be a better choice to go around here eventually, get some slightly wider tyres, because I think that's sort of partly what the front end's issues are. The fact that there is no larger tyres, so sort of the tyres are struggling to deal with all of the front weight. The fact that this thing has, you know, bigger tyre whips at the rear doesn't really bother me all that much. It's that front end grip's just not quite as good as it was in the Beamer. The Beamer did have bigger tyres, to be fair. I'm assuming this is probably lighter though. Again, that also had the wide body kit, which would add some weight in theory. But yeah, I do want to say, this is not a bad car, do not get me wrong. I quite like driving this thing stock, although it's not the best vehicle to drive on the off-road sections, it has to be said. But, yeah, it's quite a funky little vehicle, or, I say little. It's a funky vehicle to throw around normally. But, yeah, having it in this package certainly isn't bad. There are definitely things I'd improve, though. Maybe I would go with that V10 in hindsight, just to sort of see how it would perform with that engine, the slightly smaller Lamborghini engine, which weighs a little bit less. Maybe that put a little bit less stress on the front tyres, but I'm not too sure. Okay. that, to be fair, that last lap, pretty much everything went well for the Aventus, so it manages to pull itself out. Yeah, it can be quick. It really can be quick. I just think it's more challenging to drive than the X5, and one of probably the quicker cars that we've had that is more challenging to drive. Because, you know, the quicker the cars are, usually half the time it's me making stupid mistakes. It's not really the car's fault. But with this, you know, there's only so much I can do with this vehicle. I'd love to have been slightly quicker through the corners. If this thing had 335s on front, yeah, this would have been an absolute monster to be reckoned with. But the front end grip just isn't quite as good as maybe I'd want. Anyways, on to the times, and with a 1:38.429, it fills in a bit of a void for us. It goes into 4th place. It is about a second and a half down on the Jaguar CX-75 and a second and a half up on the X5 V12, so right in the middle of those two. Which, to be honest with you, leaderboard-wise, is kind of where I was expecting it to go. Yeah, a very, very good time. Beats out the Metro, the Audi RS4. That, interestingly enough, had the V10. That was an option for this. The V8 Focus RS, TVR Griffith Speed 12. Yeah, a very, very solid time from a pretty solid car. Again, it is a bit of a shame for me because I can definitely tell what would make this car just that little bit better. But unfortunately, I don't have the option to make it better. Anyways, thank you all very much for watching this edition of Silly Car Showdown. I do hope you've enjoyed. If you'd like to request cars for the series, you can do so in a couple of ways. One way is if you're on my channel to join the Discord in the link in the description and request cars in my request chat. That's where I prefer you do it, just because I can keep a better sort of tab on cars, and they are 100% guaranteed to end up on the list if you put them in there. But you can use the comment section. And I will endeavour to add them to my list. If you're watching this on HD Central, comment section as well. If you are watching this on HD Central as well, if you click on the description, there will be a link to my channel where you can come and watch some subcar content if that's what you desire. But other than that, thank you all very much for watching, and until next time, farewell.